Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And just days before the start of open impeachment hearings, the battle lines drawn right now. House Republicans just hours ago and just ahead of a deadline released their list of witnesses and that they would like to see. Now, headlining their list is Joe Biden's son, Hunter, also the whistleblower who would have to publicly identify his or herself in order to testify. They're also asking for a joint panel featuring some familiar names by now in this scandal: Kurt Volker, Bill Taylor, and George Kent. We have a great group of people right now to break it all down for us. You see our panel right there. But first, let's head to the White House. And Kelly O'Donnell, who's live for us. And Kelly, the president is out of town right now, but he has a whole lot of issues right now. The Republicans came out with this list. Walk us through their witness list.
Well, certainly, Candace, this is a chance for Republicans to have their say in when this impeachment inquiry moves to the public phase. Democrats, because they have control of the House, are in charge of the witnesses and have been running the operation behind closed doors in this first phase. And so as it goes to the public hearings, Republicans want to tell their story, and they will certainly meet some resistance. You showed the list of names. Of course, Hunter Biden would have to be called to speak publicly to talk about his time working on a board in Ukraine, Burisma, the energy company. It also calls for another official from that company included in the list. In addition to the whistleblower, and the sources to the whistleblower is a woman who worked for the DNC and also had interfaced with the Ukrainian embassy in Washington. That's the Republican story that the president would like to see laid out. And what we know right now is that Chairman Adam Schiff, the Democrat in charge of the House Intelligence Committee, has put out a statement saying that he wants to give due consideration to any witnesses from the minority side, the Republican side. However, he was clear that he was not going to use the public hearings to relitigate or attempt to litigate the theories and conspiracies that the president has talked about with respect to Ukraine or Biden. So remember that Democrats get to shape the ultimate witness list in terms of what the American people see going forward. And so that is at least a very early indication that that list from Republicans will not be accepted. And in part, Republicans know that going in. And so the team who constructed this is hoping that discussion of the list itself makes some of the points that they hope to make. That's part of the drama back and forth. Now, the president also has been tweeting about this. You're right. He is out of town. He's in the air right now, heading to Alabama to attend the big college football game between Alabama and LSU today. The president spoke to us briefly here on the South Lawn before he left, and also briefly addressed reporters as he was boarding Air Force One to make that trip. The president saying, kind of tongue-in-cheek, that Nervous Nancy, as he refers to the Speaker of the House, should be included as well. So this is certainly an opportunity for Republicans to push back, and we're already getting indications that Democrats will be careful about the list and will be resisting some of those attempts. Candace?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell there for us at the White House. Quite a busy day there on the South Lawn. Kelly, thank you. My next guest also covers the White House and Washington for Politico. With me now is Daniel Lippman. Daniel, thanks for being here. So we saw the list right there. Kelly went into it. Which of the witnesses on that House Intel Republicans wish list, you might say, should we actually expect to hear from?
I think, Kurt Volker is one of those witnesses that both Democrats and Republicans would probably be likely happy to hear from, because I think Adam Schiff doesn't want to make it look like he is blocking all of the Republican witnesses. I don't think we're going to see Hunter Biden. Democrats are going to say that it's ridiculous to bring up someone who knows nothing about the quid pro quo between Trump and the Ukrainians, and they will say that, Hunter did nothing wrong, and they don't want to inject, more theater into a process that could hurt them.
And what if the lists are rejected is rejected by the Democrats? What does that say about the optics about this whole thing?
Yeah, I don't expect the whole list to be rejected because Republican points about process have picked up some steam, where you have mainstream journalists say that the process should have been more open from the start, and that they shouldn't have had these closed-door depositions. But now we have all of those transcripts, and we're going to have public hearings. And so I think Adam Schiff, he recognizes the optics, and he also wants the process to not turn into the Mueller hearings earlier this summer, where it did not achieve Democratic goals of making the president kind of look bad, that it was too convoluted, and they want to stay laser focused on something that is easily understandable, and not get too bogged down in the weeds.
Well, Daniel, you've read many of the transcripts of those closed-door testimonies, as have I, and you get a sense at the top of many of those hearings that it was quite a competition between the Republicans and the Democrats there, and quite a fight. You get a sense that once it goes before the public cameras, that's going to just intensify?
100%. You're going to have Republicans talk about the whistleblower and try to tear down his or her credibility. You're going to try to get Republican attempts to have witnesses identify who they talk to in the intelligence community to try to suss out the name of whoever the whistleblower is. But I think you're also going to have attempts by Adam Schiff where he has 45 minutes at the start of some of these days of hearings where he can actually kind of lay out, have the witness lay out exactly what happened, instead of having these 5-minute ping pongs like you had last time around with the Mueller hearings.
It is Monday, the 11th of November of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh my, another one of those weekends, do you say? Yes, it will be for the foreseeable future. It won't be removal time soon, but removal time could be coming sooner than we expect. Let's hope so. Let's work at it. Let's. Okay, so much news going on in the world. Do we attend to all of it? Well, we here at the Salon of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy decide just to curate a show, synthesize it down, and hit some high points and some maybe not so obvious stories out there in the news world. And, well, that's for your River City Hash Mondays dining pleasure, indeed. Well, I have to say that I am not happy by any appeasement to the Republicans during this impeachment inquiry. What the hell? Adam Schiff, you don't need to honor any wish list that the GOP may be bringing. And why? I also want to know why did Nancy allow Jim Jordan to get on the Intel Committee? She didn't have to do that. Is this because of some sort of optics? I don't care about these optics. I'll tell you what the optics are. When you appease, you become a Neville Chamberlain. Everybody go to bed. It'll be fine. And it never is. Those optics are bad. So Jim Jordan gets to come onto the Intel Committee so that he can now run to Donald Trump with all of the dirt so that they can fix whatever it is they need fixing? Or does Nancy calculate that any fixing that they do will be so obvious that the American people will be appalled? Yes, the American people will be appalled, but you won't hear from them. You'll hear from the basket of deplorables who say, it's just perfectly okay. All right. So, Nancy, I have to say, Nancy hasn't let us down. But I'm bothered by this Jim Jordan switcheroo. I don't like it. Especially a Jim Jordan. Jeez. We can make all sorts of wrestling jokes, and you know them because they're just so obvious. But this is not joking around. This is real. So I'm curious, is Devin going to be dropped from the chair? Is that possible? Because presumably a Republican gets replaced. So a wish list. They want to speak with Hunter Biden and the whistleblower. And in that clip at the top, they were talking about the optics and that Schiff and Nancy have to contend with mainstream media reporters concerned that the depositions were taken in private. What? Yeah, depositions are taken in private. Always. If a mainstream media person is putting that out there without qualifying and saying, all depositions are taken in private. All grand jury testimony is taken in secret. There is no transcript published for a grand jury. Conveniently, though, we, as the Democrats, we're not allowed to have a special prosecutor because you got a criminal running the DOJ right now. So that's why the committees had to take on the task of a prosecutor, a special prosecutor, and still do the depositions in private. Who? I have never heard of a deposition between warring businesses taking place on the sidewalk for everyone to hear, and we'll just broadcast it and put it up on Fifth Avenue on that big digital screen that they have on that building there. We'll put it there. That never happens. This is the gaslighting of America. And anybody, mainstream media reporters or whoever, perpetrates this gaslighting propaganda is an accomplice to a crime. I don't care if you have First Amendment rights or not. You cannot yell fire in a crowded theater. In this reporter's opinion. All right. So I'm a little upset about the take on these impeachment inquiries and how it looks. I'll tell you how it looks. This guy is a mobster and he's exposed. It's very simple. Very simple. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, Trump's oil mission in Syria raises serious legal problems for the U.S. military. Yeah, but he doesn't care. U.S. intel and law enforcement agencies have beefed up security measures and communication protocols to combat ever more foreign interference in the elections. Not just the one coming up, but, the big one, but all of them. And missing from the curricula for decades, civics and the Constitution are now being taught because of the impeachment inquiry. Well, I told you a lot of good would be coming out of this. It's already started. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Ukrainian government forces and Russian-backed rebels began withdrawing from a village in the disputed Donbass region, paving the way for a summit between Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany, but not the United States. We're minor actors now anyway. And the British officer who started the Syrian Civil Defense, known as the White Helmets, has conveniently fallen from a 5-story balcony and died after being accused by Russia of being a spy. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page, right there by the social media scroll, is our chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will also notice our link to our Patreon page, and we would not be able to do what we do, which is Resistance Radio. We would be incapable, unable to do any of it without your generosity over all these many years that we have been resisting 24/7, 365. And we thank you for that generosity. Do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It doesn't take much. How about the cost of an espresso type coffee drink sent our way once a month will help us pay our bills. And, of course, put away money for the needed machinery that wears out, because we resist as fire-hot resistors. Oh, my gosh. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and you could follow me there. I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media. And you can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Well, Thanksgiving is coming up, and indeed it's Veterans Day today, and we should honor all veterans, living and dead. Of course, I guess if you're a veteran, you're still living, but I honor everybody. And but Thanksgiving is coming up, and all of this, as we get towards the end of the year, is a constant reminder now to me about my son's passing. I thought that I could handle this with some grace and ease. Maybe, I don't know about grace. The ease of it has certainly not been very easeful. Oh, no. And there's these little talismans, these little demarcations, points in time that remind you, those last conversations. So as Thanksgiving's coming up, of course, we all get together for the holidays. And it's hard not to run those last conversations through my head. In the months after he had passed, I had convinced myself that I was going to be okay, because really, my son and I were pretty damn close, and we spoke about everything. So I felt that, there wasn't anything left unsaid. Well, that was one way of getting through the first few months, because now I have all of these conversations I'd like to hold with him, and I got to tell you, I like it better when who you're speaking with is able to speak back without you making it up in your head. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't go with the voices. All right. Because they may be manifestations of really what I want rather than what is. So it's been a bit difficult in the last couple of weeks. This last weekend was particularly hard again, and I did a lot of crying. Fancy that. Everybody tells me it's normal and it's gonna really be happening for the rest of my life, so I have that going for me. I get to look forward to that. All right, why don't we go ahead and get into the curated part of our salon here, and this first offering of the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, comes out of the Associated Press. Donald Trump has approved an expanded military mission to secure an expanse of oil fields across eastern Syria. Sounds like a war crime to me. You're not supposed to be able to do this, Donnie. Jeez. Raising a number of difficult legal questions about whether U.S. troops can launch strikes against Syrian, Russian, or other forces if they threaten the oil, U.S. officials said. The decision, coming after a meeting on Friday between Trump and his defense leaders, locks hundreds of U.S. troops into a more complicated presence in Syria, despite Trump's vow to get America out of the war. Under the new plan, troops would protect a large swath of land controlled by Syrian Kurdish fighters that stretches nearly 90 miles from Deir al-Zur to al-Asakeh, but its exact size is still being determined. Oh, well, in that case, it'll just get bigger. Officials said many details still have to be worked out, but Trump's decision hands commanders a victory in their push to remain in the country to prevent any resurgence of the Islamic State, counter Iran, and partner with the Kurds who battled IS alongside the U.S. for several years, but it also forces lawyers in the Pentagon to craft orders for the troops that could see them firing on Syrian government or Russian fighters trying to take back oil facilities that sit within the sovereign nation of Syria. One little like mental exercise one can take. Think about what you would say if they did it to you. How would we like it if some third party came here and said, "You want your oil fields?" No way. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity in order to discuss internal deliberations because everybody's anonymous. They are. Trump's order also slams the door on any suggestion that the bulk of more than 1,200 U.S. troops that have been in Syria will be coming home anytime soon, as he has repeatedly promised. We're talking about Dumont Donnie here, so let's always be clear about that. Senator Tim Kaine called the mission misguided. Well, I don't think you're the only one, Tim. Risking the lives of our troops to guard oil rigs in eastern Syria is not only reckless, it's not legally authorized. Trump betrayed our Kurdish allies that have fought alongside American soldiers in the fight to secure a future without ISIS, and instead moved our troops to protect oil rigs. The Pentagon will not say how many forces will remain in Syria for the new mission. Other officials also speaking on condition of anonymity to discuss ongoing deliberations because they're always anonymous. Suggests the total number could be at least 800 troops, including the roughly 200 who are at the Al-10th garrison in southern Syria. According to officials, lawyers are trying to hammer out details of the military order, which would make clear how far troops will be able to go to keep the oil in the Kurds' control. Well, just hire John Yoo. They can crush an infant's testicles to keep it there, according to that lawyer. Rosenball of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. U.S. spy and law enforcement agencies said they had strengthened procedures for informing Congress, state and local governments, private business, and the public about foreign interference in U.S. elections, plural, elections. The FBI has already given some American election candidates defensive briefings on evidence U.S. agencies collected for election interference, an FBI official told a briefing for journalists. The official, who again spoke on condition of anonymity because they are all anonymous, declined to give further details regarding who might have been warned about the interference or where and how such interference might have originated. You know, they tried telling Trump, and he said, really? They're helping? An official, also speaking on condition of anonymity because they are all anonymous, said that U.S. agencies believe that Russia, China, and Iran all present continuing potential threats to the U.S. electoral system. However, officials stressed that U.S. agencies had not seen direct threats to American election systems recently. Recently? You mean like since after the last election that we had last week? You haven't seen it since then? Recently, they haven't had any actual direct threats. You know, flipping votes. Is that what we're talking about? But we're afraid to? An FBI official added that the Bureau had invested a lot of time in trying to help social media companies detect inauthentic, politically related message traffic and shares information on this with social media companies. Really? Seems to be working pretty good on Facebook. I've got a lot of directed trolls and bots coming my way trying to keep me silent. But they won't. Officials said enhanced notification procedures are being activated by the FBI, DHS, and the Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency. What's that? That would be the CISA, to supplement procedures already used by federal agencies to notify victims of crime, including computer hacking or other crimes directed against political campaigns. The official said that parties could receive such notifications, including targets of election interference, Congress, and the public. In a briefing paper on the new notification procedures, agencies involved said that the need to protect sensitive national security sources and methods would be considered when officials are deciding whether or not to issue an interference notification. You mean like when Dumadani was being used? They decided to try to tell him, and when he said, hey, I want the help, they said, okay, we'll just be quiet and watch you do it for a while they collected evidence. The paper said the Secret Service would be informed of any evidence of foreign political interference directed against major U.S. presidential and vice presidential candidates in the 2020 election, as well as organizations and events in which they participate. One official said victims and targets of election-related interference would not have a veto over who federal authorities would notify about such interference, Donnie. Though security and political sensitivities would certainly be considered before such notifications are undertaken. This final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is brought to us by Share Blue Media and the Associated Press. The 10th graders in Adrian Albright's civics class at a rural North Carolina high school had done their homework, and now it was time to decide. Should Donald Trump be impeached? The students dragged their chairs across the room, those who opposed removing Trump from office on one side, those in favor on the other. Undecided students were in the middle. Wow, that's one way to teach it. Your job is to try to persuade your classmates in here to come to your side. To your understanding, Albright told the teenagers at Chatham Central High School. You know what's funny? Is that we began learning civics when I was still in grade school. This is the first time they're getting it, and it's in high school. Isn't that odd? I consider it odd. The House impeachment inquiry into Trump's dealings with Ukraine has become a teachable moment in classrooms around the country as educators incorporate the events, often hundreds of miles away in Washington, in their lesson plans. Well, excuse me, civics is America. It doesn't just happen in D.C. Okay. They are using the debate in Congress to teach students about the Constitution and presidential power, provide history lessons about earlier impeachment classes, and hold mock votes that mirror the divisions in American politics. Well, you know, I would start with teaching about the Magna Carta and work up from there. In Albright's first class on impeachment in October, students read articles and drew posters explaining the process without getting into politics. That changed on Tuesday, when the students took sides, coincidentally, as House Democrats were releasing transcripts of closed-door testimony in the impeachment probe. Like many members of Congress who will decide the Republican president's fate, most of the students in Albright's class had already made up their minds and would not be swayed. Wow. So in other words, it's all sides. Don't worry, we're all wrong. No, there's one side that's right, and there's one side that is wrong. There's a demarcation here. All right. In other words, no one has an open mind. Okay. The tally at the start of class Tuesday, 15 against impeachment, 3 for, and 10 undecided because they're in North Carolina. The 6 precincts in Bear Creek, where the school is located, voted almost 55% for Trump in 2016, while Chatham County went for Hillary. Both candidates were represented in campaign signs hanging in the classroom. The Democrats have just been slamming Trump and trying to find every little thing ever since he got into office. Well, yeah, because the Russians helped him, you little snotty brat. They're just trying to get a reason to kick him out and impeach him. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember, in fact, way old enough to remember, when there was a particular Southern Democratic president who was impeached for, shall we say, what it was? How about if you read the Ken Starr porn report? See if your parents will let you read that smut. Arguing for impeachment, Mecca's Cotton said Congress needs to keep a close watch on Trump. I'm not saying he's a monarch or anything, she said, but the Founding Fathers knew one day maybe a monarch would happen, and they didn't want that. So I think we shouldn't let anything go, and that's with any president. Emma Preston was undecided. How many months does he have until the next election? Not that many. So if we're just going to sit here and have this argument until the next election, it's a waste of time. There shouldn't be an impeachment process going on when there's going to be a re-election. Well, let me tell you little. Impeachment can be like a campaign. For a presidential campaign. Have you ever heard of Oppo research? When a crime has been committed in full view of the American citizenry, maybe this is a campaign for president. Maybe this is a criminal probe for the public to see. and a trial for the public to see, and then decide if they want to remove him when Mitch McConnell puts it all in the graveyard. So yes, there is an election coming up, and there is an impeachment going on, and there will be a decision one way or another. All right, let's get to our break. Wow. I wasn't teaching, I was proclaiming. Indeed. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. Hey, and one other thing, I should just give you a little heads up. Since it is Veterans Day, I'm going to be a bit pretentious and share a live recording on KUSF back in November of 2018, or, around Veterans Day. And in honor of the military. And so, yeah, I'm sharing that with you. So stay tuned, and we will come back. And you are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth. This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet, meaning more and more sea ice is melting every year.
It's really concerning, the rapid loss of sea ice out there, for a lot of reasons.
Tracy Goldstein, a researcher and conservationist at UC Davis. She says one of those reasons is animals like ice seals need the ice to haul out on and give birth. Another reason, as the Arctic warms, the fish the seals eat may be moving to deeper and colder waters, so the seals have to travel farther to hunt them.
So the combination of all of that over time is probably going to affect their health and their body condition, and that will make them not just underweight, but also more susceptible to other diseases.
And those diseases may also be encroaching upon Arctic marine mammals because, spotting a trend here, Arctic sea ice is melting.
Totally unintended consequence of all of that. But yes, when there used to be an ice bridge, certain populations would remain separate from each other, and so they couldn't come in contact and give each other their bacteria, viruses, etc. But once those channels started to open, animals were able to move further and came into contact with new species that they had not come in contact with in the past.
Goldstein and her colleagues documented the spread of a disease called phocine distemper virus from 2001 through 2016. It's related to the measles and causes skin lesions, coughing, pneumonia, seizures, and sometimes death in marine mammals. Goldstein's team scanned historical and contemporary marine mammal blood samples for antibodies against the virus. They also hunted for evidence of live infections in nasal swabs taken of mammals. And they found that flare-ups of the virus were linked to years with extreme losses in sea ice, suggesting that open waters aided the spread of the pathogen, perhaps along the melted coastline north of Siberia. Their analysis is in the journal Scientific Reports. Mammals that depend on ice to survive may already be slated for extinction as the Arctic melts, Goldstein says, and more frequent epidemics like this viral one could hasten the blow. But humans may also be affected.
Up in the Arctic, people subsist on these species, so they really rely on these animals for their livelihood and well-being. And as those animals disappear or as their habitat disappears, that's also going to heavily affect humans in that area. So overall, I think the overall health of the environment and the animals and the people up in the Arctic over time is just going to continue to deteriorate.
Unless, of course, we humans take meaningful action to slow the planet's warming. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. Those at increased risk for flu complications include children under the age of 5 and adults 65 and older, people with chronic health problems such as heart disease, asthma, and diabetes, and pregnant women. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Sweetie, want some fruit?
You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Is there any provision in the Constitution of the United States that requires the President to tell the truth? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Or stated a bit differently and more expansively, what are the job requirements for President? Well, here they are. Article 2, Section 1 provides, quote, "The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years." Later on, that section says, quote, "No person except a natural-born citizen shall be eligible to the office of President. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained the age of 35 years. And still later in that section, quote, "Before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." Well, really, that's about it. The constitutional job requirements for President are pretty minimal. That said, it probably is more than worth noting that the power of all elected officials, at least in theory, comes from the consent of the governed. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1887. That was a tragic day for the labor movement. 4 men were hung in Chicago for their alleged role in the bombing at a labor rally at the city's Haymarket Square a year earlier. In a sensational trial, a total of 8 men were convicted for Haymarket. Although the trial had not proven any of the men had any ties to the bombing, 5 were sentenced to die. 1 died in jail before the execution could take place. The others were martyred for their support of the labor movement and the fight for the 8-hour workday. 2 of the men were German-born August Spies and Adolf Fischer, who had worked at Arbeiter Zeitung, a Chicago German-language pro-worker newspaper. A third was Albert Parsons, a Southern-born anarchist and the editor of the working people's English-language newspaper, The Alarm. The fourth was George Engel, a German-born labor activist and owner of a toy store. Neither Parsons nor Engel were even present at Haymarket during the time of the bombing. Before he was executed, Albert Parsons declared, "Let the voice of the people be heard." August Spies shouted, "The day will come when our silence will be more powerful than the voices you strangle today." In 1893, a Haymarket Martyrs Monument was commemorated at the Forest Home Cemetery just outside of Chicago. Carved at the base is August Spee's Declaration. That same year, the governor of Illinois pardoned the remaining 3 Haymarket prisoners. 7 of the 8 men who were convicted of the Haymarket affair are buried at the cemetery, along with many other progressive activists who wanted to be interned alongside the martyrs. Each year, visitors from around the world visit the cemetery to pay their respects to these heroic men. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
And Justice will be fading in here. And ladies and gentlemen, it's Justice Putnam. And would you care to say the title of the song or any?
Yeah, this is called No One Really Knows Him. And, I have this idea that the unknown soldier is not buried in a tomb, but the unknown soldier is really all the soldiers that have to fight in this war or any war. There's a slow train rolling. It's blowing around the bend, and there's a flag-draped coffin in the last car of that rolling train. No one really knows him, except maybe his comrades in arms and the few people who loved him, who lived near the hills of the setting sun. He had a young wife and a baby. He had a car and a garden too. They said he died for freedom and for the old red, white, and blue. No one really knows him, except maybe his comrades in arms and the few people who loved him, who lived near the hills of the setting sun. He never made a big plan, except to take care of those he was closest to. Maybe teach a Bible class and protect the old red, white, and blue. No one really knows him, except maybe his comrades in arms and the few people who loved him, who lived near the hills of the setting sun. He owned a store that sold electronics. He gave some weekends to the old red, white, and blue. He never questioned the reason when the president said there's some fighting to do. No one really knows him, except maybe his comrades in arms and the few people who loved him, who lived near the hills of the setting sun. He drove a load of bandages under a red cross and a crescent moon. His truck then exploded, 1,000 pieces of the old red, white, and blue. A slow train rolling, it's blowing around the bend, and there's a flag-draped coffin in the last car of that rolling train. No
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit. We're still not supposed to be getting that cold. It's supposed to be in the mid-40s, not the low. But hey, what are you going to do? We are expected to be a bit warmer than yesterday, though we were very temperate yesterday and through the weekend at around 70 to 71 degrees. Expected a high of 73 to 75. I think it'll be closer to the 73. Overnight lows are ostensibly to be in the low 50s. We'll see about that. It would be nice. Tomorrow we're expected to have a high, maybe of about 70 to 71 rather than to 73 to 75. Winds remain light and variable and have been and will be in the foreseeable forecast. We are remaining under an air stagnation warning. A inversion layer is just holding everything in from really the whole West Coast, at least the Bay Area, all the way up. And, okay, so cloudy skies will be mixed in with some sun today. And then increasing clouds tonight and cloudy skies early tomorrow, then partly cloudy in the afternoon. We have no registering pollen alert right now. That's very interesting. The air quality index, though we are in a air stagnation warning, the air quality is good at 26 parts per million in my little region here where the mothership resides. And the daytime UV index is a seasonal low at 2. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.18 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 49 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 48 and partly cloudy. Rome is 52 with rain and looks like they have a flood watch. Kiev is 52 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 50 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 52 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 62 and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees with fog. And New York is 55 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and they ought to be anonymous in this case if it has anything to do with plaid. Ukrainian government forces and Russian-backed rebels began withdrawing from a village in the disputed Donbass region on Saturday, one of a series of measures that could pave the way for a summit between Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany, and, wow, the United States is not included. Fighting between Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed fighters in the eastern region has killed more than 13,000 since 2014, with both sides accusing each other of violating a ceasefire that was agreed in the Belarus capital Minsk in 2015. Relations between Ukraine and Russia collapsed following Moscow's annexation of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014, which prompted Western sanctions. Moscow has blamed Kiev for delaying this four-way summit. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky won a landslide election in April, promising to end the simmering conflict, and Kiev has said its troop withdrawal from the village of Petroviska would mean it had fulfilled all necessary conditions it needs for a peace summit to take place. Who's editing this thing? They must be anonymous, too. And once again, Moscow has blamed Kiev for delaying the four-way summit. Zelensky secured a landmark prisoner swap with Russia in September, but his plan to grant a special status to the Donbass region as part of this peace effort has sparked some protests. Zelensky has said he would never betray Ukraine. Ukraine says after the Crimea annexation, Russia engineered quasi-separatist uprisings across a belt of eastern Ukraine that escalated into a full-scale conflict, something Moscow denies. Two so-called People's Republics, unrecognized by either Kiev or Moscow, have formed in the Donetsk and Luhansk industrial regions of eastern Ukraine known as Donbass.
Je te donne seulement l'amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
This final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table comes by way of the UK Independent. Belle True is the Middle Eastern correspondent reporting. A former British officer who helped start the White Helmets, an emergency response group in Syria, has been found dead near his home in Istanbul just days after the Russian Foreign Ministry menaced him, accusing him of being a spy. James L. Mesurier, age 43, was the director of Mayday Rescue Charity that trained members of the Syrian Civil Defense, nicknamed the White Helmets, playing a major role in its creation in Turkey in 2013. He was awarded an Order of the British Empire for his work helping Syrians 3 years later. The police have yet to confirm how Mr. Mesurier died, but he is believed to have conveniently fallen from the balcony of his apartment in the Turkish city at dawn today. His death comes just 3 days after he was publicly attacked by Maria Zakharova, Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman, who on Friday claimed he was a former agent of Britain's MI6 who has been spotted all over the world. He and the White Helmets had been the subject of a disinformation campaign spearheaded by Moscow and their allies in Damascus for years. Well, this is a tragedy, but there's always a convenience when it comes to Vlad. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. In fact, we're going to meet up tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coër. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.